Hello and welcome to Doing Does DVD, and this is Disney Classics number 52, Frozen. This is one that went on to be super famous for some reason, and one that I have at least actually seen before, although only the once. I can't really say for sure, but I guess that it became super famous because of the incredibly catchy and memorable music. Although I'm realising now that I have no idea who is responsible for that music. I don't know if they're a particularly famous person or if they've ever done anything notable before Frozen, but I guess we'll find that out later. I remember enjoying this when I first watched it, but also don't remember thinking, oh my god, this is amazing, it's the best thing I've ever seen either. As I mentioned in my Tangled video, I kind of ended up enjoying the character of Rapunzel more than I remember enjoying the character of Elsa. But perhaps that will change once I refresh my memory on Frozen. Having only seen it once, and I'm not entirely sure when, probably something like 5 years ago, sometime after it came out, so I'm kind of spotty on some of the details. So there might be some really cool things that I've completely forgotten about. So I think that's about all there is to say in terms of intro for this one, because when it comes to expectations for this one, I'm, pretty sure I already know what's about to happen. So let's get this one watched and then we can review. Still very enjoyable in very many ways. I briefly mentioned last week in Wreck-It Ralph about how they'd improved the lighting and reflections in their rendering engine, and this, only a year later, they've definitely pushed that much further. Right from the opening, the translucency of the ice is just spectacular. The diffusions and the reflections of reflections needed to do that well are just superb. And then it extends beyond that, all atmospheric effects, all the backgrounds and the world and the things like that. Everything just seems like it's gone up another level. It does seem though that they haven't pushed the characters quite as far. They still have that very caricature look and they're a bit smooth like the ones from Tangled, although slightly more detailed. But, that's also fine because that's a specific look they're going for. This is an animated film. If they tried and pushed everything to completely digital photorealistic, it would be a completely different feel. I mentioned there's probably some details in this I'm forgetting, and one in particular was the whole big snow monster sequence. I'd completely forgotten that part existed, but most of the rest of it was what I was expecting. The songs are still catchy and memorable, but I mentioned that I didn't know who had actually written them. Turns out they're a husband and wife team of Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez, two people of which I have never heard before. Turns out they have worked for Disney before, but not in one I've seen, because they did the original songs for the 2011 version of Winnie the Pooh, which isn't included in this box set or the UK version of the Disney Classics list. But having listened to Frozen, it's no surprise to find out that before they worked for Disney, they were responsible for Broadway musicals, particularly Avenue Q and Book of Mormon. Musically, it was also interesting to see the name Christoph Beck credited for the original score. He's a name that always sticks out and I notice because of seeing him in the credits each week for Buffy and Angel. Speaking of credits, I noticed a change which must have been fairly recent, which I imagine probably started around when they were doing purely CG stuff. If you go back to the credits from the hand-drawn era of Disney, it's like everything is separated per character. If you look at this example from Aladdin, there's a supervising animator, a voice actor, and a bunch of animators responsible for just Aladdin. Then there's another group responsible for just the genie, and Jafar and Jasmine and everybody else. Having distinct teams working on each character throughout the entire film, helps keep consistency within the drawings. Another separate team doing the layouts of all those things, another separate team doing the backgrounds. But I happen to notice here the entire voice cast got listed first and separately before everybody else, kind of more like a traditional live action film. And then all the animators are in separate groups, mostly just, under various types of animator. It just goes to show a bit how things have changed. You no longer have these superstar artists The computers have brought in a more sort of multi-discipline format where everybody's working on everything. You will have a team doing 3D modelling that create like the skeleton virtual model, and then you'll have separate animators that do the movements for them. But that consistency of a single team working on a single character isn't needed because the computer handles all of that. Story-wise, I was talking about comparisons to Tangled because it's got a similar sort of look, although Frozen's more advanced. And it's more comparable than say Wreck-It Ralph because they're both a fairy tale genre. And I talked about how I thought I preferred Rapunzel over Elsa, having just seen Tangled for the first time. But having rewatched Frozen now, I realise that's kind of an unfair comparison. Even though they're both the official Disney princesses, the story of Frozen is really more about Anna. Obviously it's a bit more complicated than that, but Elsa's kind of taking on the villain role in this story. But still, if we're going to keep comparing Frozen and Tangled, then I still think Tangled comes out on top for me. And I think that's because it's simply more fun and funny. And while this one has funny moments, it's a much more emotional story. But maybe that's also the mood of the times. In the middle of a pandemic, maybe I'm looking for more fun and funny than I am deep and serious. But yeah, still great and very obvious why it's so highly regarded. What are your thoughts on Frozen? As always, tell me about those in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next week with Big Hero 6.